Here are the 10 most common verbs in English: be, have, do, say, get, make, go, see, know, and take. Every single one of them is irregular. Now Spanish: ser, haber, estar, tener, hacer, all irregular. French: être, avoir, aller, faire, all irregular too. Spanish, French, German, Dutch. Right across this family, the verbs you need on day one are the broken ones. That is not bad luck. It is a pattern strong enough that in 2007, a team at Harvard tried to write it down as an equation. Today, what they found and what happened when somebody checked. Part 1. How big is this problem really? Count the different verbs in a 2 million word corpus of written English, and only 3.6% are irregular. 160 of them against 4,240 regular ones. A rounding error, but now count the verbs as they actually appear in real text. Those 160 irregulars are 58% of every verb you meet. The other 4,000 share what is left. So there is no route around them. You cannot learn the regular verbs first and pick up the others later, because the others are most of what people say. In the British National Corpus, the first 13 lexical verbs are all irregular. The first regular one is look, in 14th place. Part 2. So somebody turned this into a formula. Erez Lieberman, Jean-Baptiste Michel, and colleagues took 177 verbs that were irregular in Old English, the language of Beowulf, and are still in the language today, and followed each one for 1,200 years. By Middle English, 145 were still irregular. Today, 98. 79 of them quietly gave up and took the regular ending. Help, walk, work, and reach were all once irregular verbs. And when they lined the survivors up by how often the verb gets used, the pattern was almost embarrassingly clean. Of the rarest 12 verbs, 91% had regularized. Of the commonest 13, be, have, come, do, go, know, say, see, take, and their neighbors, not one. 0. Their headline was The Shape of That Curve. A verb 100 times rarer regularizes 10 times faster, 10 being the square root of 100. Rarity kills verbs, and it kills them at the rate of a square root. Run that backwards, and you get half-lives. For the rarest verbs, about 300 years. For the ones in the middle, a couple of thousand, and for be and have, 38,800 years, which is a mathematician's way of saying never. And then they did the bravest thing a paper can do. They made a prediction. The rarest irregular verb left in English, they said, is wed. 4.2 uses per million. It is next. Their line was, now is your last chance to be a newlywed. Part 3. Why does being common protect a verb at all? John Bybee calls it the conserving effect. A form you use constantly gets a stronger trace in memory, so you reach for it whole instead of rebuilding it. And a form you never rebuild never gets reshaped by the regular pattern. Rare forms have no such protection. That is her proposal, rather than a proven mechanism, but it predicts exactly what the corpora show. And when a verb never gets rebuilt, something extraordinary becomes possible. It can stop being one verb at all. English be is not an irregular verb. It is at least 3 separate ancient verbs welded together, and specialists have argued for a century about whether or makes it 4. Go does the same trick. Went was never the past of go. It is the past of wend. It started appearing in the 1200s and had taken over by about 1500. Before that, the past of go was aode, from a different verb
entirely one that has vanished from English. Spanish does the same thing, and if you have ever wondered why ir looks like three verbs, this is why. Voi comes from Latin vadere. Ir, iba, and ido come from ire. Iba is straight from the Latin ibam, and fui comes from esse, the Latin verb for to be, which explains the thing that confuses every Spanish learner alive. Ser and ir have the same preterite, fui, fuiste, fue, and not just the preterite. Across the whole perfect stem, 24 forms of to be and to go are letter for letter identical because both borrowed that tense from the same Latin verb. So these verbs are not broken, they are the oldest working parts of the language. The tempting story is that they are irregular because they were too useful to ever be tidied up. The dollar possibility, which might be truer, common words simply do not drift much. Either way, they survive. Part 4. So how did that prediction turn out? Badly. In 2014, a study of 330 million words of American English found wed moving the wrong way. Wedded was being replaced by wed. Irregularizing, not regularizing. And here is the detail nobody mentions. Wed is not one of the 177 verbs they studied. The paper's most famous prediction is about a verb that was never in the dataset, and it was not just wed. A team writing in Nature in 2017 tested 36 verbs. 6 showed a clear signal, and 4 of those were going irregular, not regular. Dive to dove, wake to woke, lighted to lit, and sneaked to snuck. A reanalysis later knocked 2 of the 6 back out, so the individual verbs are shakier than the headline. What survived is the direction. Irregularization is not rare.
Then people tried the formula on other languages. In German, 164 verbs. The frequency effect showed up, but the clean mathematical law did not. The authors called the English result a coincidence, covering 2 data points. In Dutch, 179 verbs, and the paper says it flatly. The rate does not scale with the square root of frequency the way Lieberman and colleagues proposed. And here is the honest bit about that 38,000-year half-life for B. It was never measured. In the 2 commonest groups, not a single verb regularized in 1,200 years. So there was nothing to measure. That number comes from extending the line. The paper says so itself. So what actually survives? The frequency effect. German, Dutch, English, rarer verbs regularize faster in all 3, though it gets messy at the very bottom of the range. What does not survive is the neat equation, the specific half-lives, and the idea that this only runs one way. Part 5. What this actually means for learning a language. First, stop treating irregular verbs as the advanced material. Your textbook puts them at the back, after the regular ones. That is exactly backwards. They are 58% of every verb you meet, though a good slice of that is be, have, and do doing auxiliary work. They are not the exception. They are the load-bearing part. Second, learn them by frequency, never alphabetically. That list at the back of the book puts a byte next to be. One of those you will use today, one you may never use. Do the top 20 first, and you have covered most of the ground. And third, the one that actually helps. Stop trying to derive them. Linguists disagree about the underlying architecture, but everyone agrees on the practical part. Frequent irregular forms get retrieved whole, not assembled from parts. So learn went as its own word. Practice it until you never have to think. That is not laziness. That is what fluent retrieval looks like.
That is hard to do alone because automatic recall only comes from using the forms out loud, at speed, with somebody who catches you. That is what lessons are actually for. My Italki link is in the description. Lieberman's paper ends with a line I have not been able to forget. A rule is the tombstone of 1,000 exceptions. Every regular verb you meet is a verb that lost this fight. The irregular ones are the ones still standing. Your homework. Find a frequency list for your target language. Take the top 20 verbs and count how many are irregular. If you are learning something Indo-European, I expect almost all of them. Turkish or Japanese, almost none. I want to hear about it. And if that changed how you see your verb tables, subscribe. Because next time, why almost every language on earth calls a mother something like mama, and why the real reason has nothing to do with the languages being related. Sources are below. See you in the next one. Nos vemos.